old religion about to fall. We're gonna open your eyes so you can see who you're gonna call if you wanna be free. GLOBEBUSTERS! 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 Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Yeah! GLOBEBUSTERs! GLOBEBUSTERS! GLOBEBUSTERS!
And welcome everybody to GLOBEBUSTERS. We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of GLOBEBUSTERS Tech. I'm your host, Zach. Good times for all, and today we're going to be asking the question, carbon dating, I guess. This is one of those things that I think goes along with the story that we're told. Even articles within just a couple of years ago, they talk about how this has been, wait a minute, we carbon dated it and it's saying it's this old, but yet it's supposed to be, a dinosaur bone. And yeah, I don't think they quite have this nailed down yet, or I don't know if they ever can get this nailed down yet, to be honest. A lot of it has to do with particulates in the atmosphere, which, we produce a lot of carbon. We do. And this is going over millions of years, supposedly. And yeah, it's an interesting thing to look into. If you've never looked into carbon dating, there are a lot of questions being raised about how accurate it could possibly be. So before we get into that, we're going to say hello to the panel, and we're going to start off with Miss Karen B. Karen, how is your week, ma'am?
You're muted.
Oh, it won't let her unmute. It won't let me unmute. All right, we'll come back to Karen. Kyle, how are you doing this week, sir?
Doing well. Just doing whatever I can to swing for the fences. That's all I can say is just really trying hard there. I feel like the drama just is fuel for my fire. It really is. And just makes me want to get up and just ask myself, what can I do to take things to the next level? And I'm continuing to ask myself that. And one of those things that I think I kind of find myself coming back to is developing my relationships with you guys. I'm really happy about the new relationships that we've added down with Shane and Alan. And really look forward to getting to know them better. And finding more people who are really passionate about just as passionate as I am about all of this. And that all gets me going.
Nice, man. Yeah. I'm still not super passionate about all the stuff going on right now.
Well, I don't think anyone's passionate about the drama itself, not at all.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like how I respond to it, though. It's kind of responding to it. There's other ways of doing it. And so the drama's over there, but how is it affecting me? Is it affecting me by getting me down? Does it make me want to just utterly shut down? For me, I just want to talk to people. I really get socially deprived in all that. And what's going through your mind? I don't want anyone to, if they're struggling with something or they've got questions about things that don't understand, I just don't want people to just suddenly give up. It's kind of like suicide right there. If there's no signs or indicators that they were ever depressed or ever had any problems, and all of a sudden they just die, I'm going to suspect foul play or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, where did that come from? And that's what I really want to do is I want to help people before they get to that point. I'm not talking about like suicide or anything like that here, but I'm talking more of just about with questions and other things,
just giving up on learning.
Yeah, I don't want them to give up on learning. There's still so much here, friendships here. There's no reason to shut down over petty things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed.
we can still be
For sure.
very passionate learners, and I really got to say that one of the things I noticed about academia is how you are forced to agree with whatever the teacher says or whatever the textbook says. Otherwise, you're going to get penalized. That's the way mainstream academia works, right? Oh, you disagree with that? Oh, well, you just missed a point. They don't give you options to disagree. You either pretend and act like you agree with everything they say. Otherwise, you fail and you can't pass go. You can't go on to the next level or anything like that. But with flat Earth and everything here, we should be very open to accepting all different kinds of models, and we shouldn't be, smacking anyone for having a difference of opinion. That's the whole thing, the beauty of it all, really. And so there's so much to enjoy here, so much to be positive about. I don't, yeah, we this should be the least negative place ever.
Yeah, you would think so. I think a
Yeah,
lot of it has to do with, programming, really,
yeah,
social programming. And if they only put out good things on the news, people helping other people and things like that, I'm sure we'd see a lot more of that instead of more crime. You
yeah,
know, it's, I think it's that simple, really. People are programmable. And if you show them nothing but horrible, evil stuff, in daily life, they're going to be more inclined to at least get immune to seeing stuff like that and then start thinking things like that are okay. Yeah.
yeah,
And then they start letting their children see stuff like that. And then, that hits them at very young ages. And you don't want children seeing stuff. I mean, my mom was so anti violence and stuff like that.
yeah.
I mean, so many movies I watched, through the little cracks in my fingers if I could see. Because yeah, a lot of movies, if if I got to stay up extra late that night and be out there with them, there was a lot of it I didn't get to watch. That was just part of it.
I think that's kind of part of the thing that we've got to face, though, is it's unfortunate that drama ends up getting clicks, and that's what it ends up
Yeah,
being to
that too.
normal people.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, that's kind of the diva, I guess you could say. The diva lifestyle is you just got to make it as dramatic as possible. That way, it gets attention. And yeah, I don't want to be I get that the best educators know how to be entertaining, and that's really important. But at the same time, if it's kind of sacrificing your moral character and having to just be a jerk, it's not worth it. That's
Yeah,
not the kind of education we should be striving for.
yeah, totally agree. All right, Miss Karen B, I see that you have unmuted.
Yay!
Yeah.
How are you
Sorry, I was
doing?
trying to close some windows and then the window that StreamYard was in was minimized and I was like, oh shit.
These
Sorry.
things happen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
Chilly out there, wasn't it? Did you guys have some wind today too?
Yeah, it was windy. It's been cold. And then it rained a whole bunch. Yeah. I'm ready for it to be warm again.
I know, spring's coming. I'm seeing more and more buds popping on the trees, so they know it's coming. I don't listen to no weather, man. I just watch the trees. They'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And last but certainly not least, Miss Cammie Nodell. Cammie, how are you doing today, ma'am?
Oh, I'm doing warm and cozy right now. I've been a little bit under the weather, so I'm curled up in a robe. Karen, I watched the windstorms go through and pass us a little bit earlier before the sun came out, hit you, and then right after it passed you, turn into tornadoes, and that just
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
wee bit east of you. So I was so glad
Yeah.
everything was okay. They're asking, is Karen okay? And it's like, well, I see her posting, I don't see bad news, so that's good news. So,
Yeah. I saw there was a tornado touchdown, but we're okay. No tornadoes right over here.
Yeah, those are the only things I ever had to worry about up there in Indiana. We had one, the 40 years I lived up there, one tornado touched in town. And it was still like 5 miles away from where I was. So I didn't see anything or anything like that. But yeah, they didn't happen usually that close to Lake Michigan. We were only about 5 miles from the lake. So it was like, I don't know, the pressure system right there changes or something happens where the tornadoes just usually don't get that far,
Yeah.
that
Even
close to
here,
the lake.
they're not big tornadoes. It was like a F1. You know, it wasn't a huge tornado. It did touch down, but I don't think anybody got hurt or anything like that.
Yeah.
We had a
No,
tornado
and
come
it
through Salt
affected
Lake one
like
time.
a block and a half or so. I mean, you saw like we're on the street where it didn't pull down trees and power lines. For like a block and a half, it was, remarkable the strength. We've had so many trees not
Yeah.
down anyway, and our ground is soft. Oh, well, getting ready. Zach, let me ask you really quickly for people in the chat, welcome. The chat has been reset, so nobody really lost their blue or anything. Alan and Shane have come in and we've reset and we're making some changes, and actually I'm very excited going forward. But what I would like to do in the chat is, Zach, unless I can switch over, but do you have the ability to put like a wrench on Ted?
I don't know if I can do it from here.
I,
No,
I
not
can do it
from
from
right
here. I can
here.
get in from my
No.
phone. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I think we can probably get started on the show. But welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. Next week, we are going to be doing a meet and greet on this show with Shane and Alan.
Awesome.
And I'm really, really excited to do it. I love the energy they bring in, the intellect, the different ideas. Shane, I'm especially interested in talking to about optics. And combining some different things, but again, this makes me really happy, gives me a lot of hope moving forward, and I'm really, really pleased with the direction. These could not be nicer guys. They are brilliant. They
Mm-hmm.
bring so much. Yeah, love Shane and Alan. They are great add-ons, one big time, no doubt, no doubt at all. We need more like Bob. Agreed, Lender. Lender,
Hmm.
we're doing our best, and Shane and Alan, they truly have it going on. So we're honored to
Mm-hmm.
have them for the prime time. And next week we'll be getting to meet them here a little bit. I have not actually sat down and talked to them. So it will be my first time meeting them and I can't wait.
Absolutely. All right. So radiocarbon dating. Have you guys done any research on it besides watching like the normal videos I'm sure you've seen?
Lightly, lightly.
Yeah, I've never really dug deep into radiocarbon dating at all. I've never, this requires really expensive toys to do this kind of stuff. So I never, if I can't test it myself, then I have a hard time really getting excited and digging deep into it. It's just how I am. If I don't think I'm going to be able to do it anytime soon, then I'm not really going to be all that interested in, just book reading.
There's
I
something
like
about
book
trust
reading and
me,
then
bro.
playing. Yeah, there's a lot to do with getting your hands dirty and, actually seeing how things work.
Mhm.
So I've never really looked too deep into. We're going to watch a couple videos that are pro radiocarbon dating, kind of explaining how it works and this and that. And then we're going to watch a couple videos on people who have some reasons why it doesn't work. And then you guys can make up your minds from there. This first one is from Scientific America. It's just a little 2-minute 10 video called How Does Radiocarbon Dating Work?
How do we know how old something is? For people, we'd ask to see their birth certificate. For trees, we'd count the rings. But how do we know how old a fossil is? Fossils have their own internal clock. Scientists can read it by looking at the ratio of two different types of carbon atoms. Of course, every living thing is made of carbon. Plants grab carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and use it to form complex organic molecules. Animals get their carbon by eating these plants. But there's more than one form of carbon. Most carbon atoms have 6 protons and 6 neutrons. We call this carbon-12. High up in the atmosphere, sometimes cosmic rays hit nitrogen atoms. This creates carbon with 6 protons and 8 neutrons. We call this carbon-14. Carbon-12 and carbon-14 behave alike, but carbon-14 has one unique and important attribute. It's unstable. So once an animal dies, the carbon-14 in its body will start to go away. Every 5,730 years on average, about half of the carbon-14 atoms will decay into nitrogen. This
Okay. Right there is my first issue. They've been doing this for about 100 years. How do they know what it's
No, they
going to
haven't
do
been doing it
over?
for 100 years. They started in 1949 and they didn't really get into it until the 1950s. So we're not to the 100 years yet. We're closer to the 75-year mark on this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Okay, well, irregardless,
Yeah, irregardless. So
25
yeah,
years when you're talking
we,
about
but we've been, yeah, we've been doing it
5,700.
for 75 years, and they seem to know something that's exactly by extrapolating out how it's behaved. They've decided that this is
Yeah,
the
we're going to
exact
listen
half
to
life.
that part
Yet,
again.
what's the guaranteed piece that they have that's known, targeted, and evidence that's 5,000? How many years old? I want to see my tagged evidence saying that
Life.
you're.
But carbon-14 has one unique and important attribute.
Hold on, I was going to say something real quick.
So once
So-
an
Yeah, right now he's making a huge deal about the stability of carbon and carbon-14, how it's unstable, and that's like a huge working point. It all depends on the instability of that. But when it comes to carbon-14 and people ingest it and they breathe it in, that's kind of the big thing. But not all animals breathe the same amount. Like we all have different sets of lungs. Yeah, you got a mammoth over there, and how much does it breathe compared to a mouse? How much more carbon-14 do you think a bird is going to get up in the air? Because that's what you put the canary in the coal mine, right? And they're the first ones to detect if there's a weird thing going on in the atmosphere. They breathe a lot. They've got like, their lungs are phenomenal, kind of the way they work, and that's very different than a turtle, okay, or a manatee or something like that, a hippo that can hold their breath for really long periods of time. And so I kind of wonder about that, because for right here, it sounded like all animals are treated the same. And that kind of raises a red flag for
All
me.
plants as well.
Yeah, all plants, all animals, they're all treated the same way.
So listen, he's going to say it right here.
an animal dies, the carbon-14 in its body will start to go away. Every 5,730 years on average, about half of the carbon-14 atoms will decay into nitrogen.
So how could they possibly know what happens over 5,780 years or 30 years, whatever he said, if we've only been doing this for 75 years? How can you extrapolate that? Because they're only counting the half-life, and then they count another half-life, and then another half-life, and another half-life. But so you're just assuming that it's always going to decay at the same rate over 5,000 years? Like maybe at 500 years, it changes and dramatically shifts and starts doing it much slower, possibly, or they have no idea. There's so many assumptions that this stuff is built on. It's crazy that it's considered, science.
I'm going to take the other side of this, though I don't think it's going to help the other side. It didn't with me. But on the other side, what they did do to confirm this, like the $5,000, reading that I said they had no affidavit on, no paperwork, it's not in evidence. How they do say they came by it is they have a trail of tree rings going back that long, that they have decided that they have like dug in different layers and that, and they can accurately take the trees back to over 5,000 years and then test each ring for what the climate was and get testing on it. So I don't know. I see a lot of holes in like digging and dating the trees. In other words, they're dating different things from each other or doing the core samples. And again, they're doing different things cross-referencing, but the cross-referencing all points to each other, and then as soon as they find anything that doesn't meet into the model, which they find a lot of it, they call it background, a background
Right.
influence, background interference, and things, corrupting and tainting it. So in other words, it, they do a lot of cross-referencing, but each cross-reference they reference with each other to verify it. In other words, there's no known, there's not like a ruler there that you can measure something against. In other words, they're using things to come up with the numbers they want by pointing, well, with the tree, somebody could say that's better than me, but in other words, they're not using any solid benchmark. They're making their benchmarks work with each other, but they don't do so consistently. So again, they'll start throwing in different things that will throw the background on it and not have any accurate. Like they'll say, well, if the dinosaurs were here and it's only good for so many years and they were here longer than that, why do dinosaurs have carbon in it for dating? And in that case, a plant or something much later must have died near and it must have corrupted that sample, adding carbon into it, into the half-life in that. In other words, there's you can sit there and contaminate everything they're doing with things to make it cross-reference, and they do. My point about
Yeah,
it
it's
is
definitely not
they
a
do.
exact science. They'll just say, "Oh, this thing next to it must have leaked some carbon into it, and that's why we're picking it up. So we're going to erase that." You'll see when they get in here, they're going to explain just exactly how they handle their results. It's kind of like stellar aberration, anything that's not what they want, they just kind of put over here or just throw out completely. You know, we're not even going to, that didn't exist pretty much. If somebody went 10 years later to look at the notes and everything, they would never even know that that date was, given at that time, not recorded at all. It's crazy.
So as we're looking at this foundation here that has got all these holes in it, obviously, it's really flimsy. You got to think about what kinds of things people are actually building on this foundation, and like, yeah, the mountains of things, because this is a domino effect. You not take this one out, what falls? That's the big question. What falls when you take the rug out?
Yeah, so much. Evolution goes right out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll see what else he's got to say. But yeah, that was pretty much the big thing in this video, was that's how they do it. They know how much carbon's in the atmosphere, and they're going to explain it a little better in the upcoming videos. So they know how much is in the atmosphere, and the plants in the atmosphere kind of try to equilibrate, and so do we. So there's so many assumptions. It's just crazy. You'll see.
This is its half-life. After one half-life, the animal will have about half the amount of carbon-14 it started with. After another half-life, it will.
So sorry for stopping it again. That's over like 2,800 something years. They're claiming this is what it's going to do when we've been like here.
Right,
This is what we actually know.
because it's like 5,700 something is the half-life.
Yeah, so it's
So
more
you're
like
talking about
we're
half,
like right up here.
half of the half-life is 20 something.
Yeah, that would be like
100
right here.
years.
So geez, we're more like way up here.
That's a lot of assumptions
About a
there.
quarter. And after another half-life, it will have about an eighth. By contrast, the amount of carbon-12 it has in its body will stay the same. By measuring the ratio of
is this
carbon-14,
here? It's like all animals everywhere that when they die, this is the same case. They're all going to be exposed to the exact same conditions, and the
We
carbon-
examined every animal every year for 6,000 years and measured the carbon in every dead animal every year for 6,000. We know exactly what they're supposed to have.
the rate of change is going to be exactly the entire time. Nothing's going to alter it.
See, that's what there should be, though. We should have like, okay, this animal died at this date at this time, and people can come and take samples from it and test and see how accurate that's what it would be if it were like real, trying to get as close to accurate as you could. we'd have 75 years of dead animals sitting there and be like, hey, let's come and take a sample. Let's see how it's going. That'd be like part of your graduate thing. You'd have to go through and sample each one of them and, get the right answer. They'd give them to you jumbled even. Then I would start maybe buying this stuff a little more. But from what I've seen, it's nowhere near exact.
Now, the other thing too to keep in consideration, and you'll come up with it, is we can't use it on anything recent because our industrial age and like nuclear bombs and that have skewed the results. So what we're putting out now makes it not usable. But then I keep on like thinking in terms of bombs and that, and I think of every time a big volcano goes off and they say what it puts out as far as emissions equaling like how many hundreds of nuclear bombs, and I don't know. I have questions. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah, nuclear bombs really change the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, but as I understand it, like an earthquake itself can also be like a nuclear bomb in some places. Big explosions can be kind of like nuclear bombs when it comes to like putting radiation into things. Radiation can come from some really strange places sometimes that you wouldn't think. You think it only happens from a nuclear bomb, but no, it doesn't.
No, yeah. A lot of gases and stuff come up and are seeped up from underneath the ground, when earthquakes and stuff like that. Volcanoes spew all kinds of crazy stuff. And we can't beat a volcano. If we all tried as human beings and went up against the volcano, who could put out more carbon, it could go off one time in a year and it would beat
That's
us
my
tenfold.
biggest point right there. I love that point because if we were really, really concerned about the amount of pollution going into the air when it comes to cleaning the atmosphere, which do you think would be most effective? Would be trying to get people to stop using cars, or trying to figure out how to stop a volcano to make it so to ease it so it's not putting up all the smoke and stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Release the pressure. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
find a way to resolve the volcano conflict, and that would solve so many like environmental issues.
Harness the power of the
Yeah,
volcanoes. You know how much energy that is? Ooh. All right, let's see. So yeah, that's just ridiculous. We have no idea about this. Remember, we're like up here as far as we've been testing, and they're assuming the rest of this over 5,780 years is like right here.
14 to carbon 12, we can measure how many thousands of years have passed since the animal died. Carbon dating works for fossils up to about 60,000 years old. For older fossils, scientists use unstable elements that have much longer half-lives. For Scientific American's Instant Egghead, I'm Michael Moyer.
All right, thank you, Scientific America. This one is brain stuff, how stuff works. I love this channel, even though it's a lot of it's, stuff like this. They just do a really good job with all their animations and stuff. Yeah, something like this for children is awesome, I think. Channels like these. It's just easy to understand. Here we go.
Hey there, and welcome to Brain Stuff. I'm Josh Clark, and this is the Brain Stuff where I explain to you how carbon-14 dating works. Carbon-14 dating, which we also just call carbon dating, is a form of radiometric dating. And all it is measuring the decay of a certain type of atom found in a once living organism to determine when it was last alive. And all of this starts in the upper atmosphere of Earth, where it's constantly bombarded by cosmic rays. And one of the things these cosmic rays do is knock neutrons off of some atoms and protons off of others. And before you know it, the nice, stable, family man nitrogen-14 atom is all wrapped up and gone crazy and becomes what's known as a carbon-14 atom, which is radioactive. Now, carbon-14 atoms aren't the only ones in the upper atmosphere. There's also carbon-12 atoms. Carbon-12 atoms are in much more abundance, and they're pretty stable. Carbon-14 atoms are, again, radioactive and unstable, but they're formed at a reliable, steady rate. So at any point in time, we have a pretty good idea of the ratio of carbon-12 atoms to carbon-14 atoms. Got that? It's important. Now, carbon dioxide is essential to life here on Earth. Plants breathe it in, animals eat the plants, we eat the animals and the plants. And these carbon molecules, carbon-14 and 12, that make up the carbon dioxide, get in everything. What's neat is that the ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-14 found in all these living things here on Earth is pretty much the same as what's in the atmosphere, which means it's predictable. And some very, very smart scientists have figured out that carbon-14 actually decays at a predictable rate, right? Carbon-14, like all radioactive particles,
You don't touch it, that is.
now the half-life is the amount of time it takes for the number of radioactive particles in a sample to decrease by half. Carbon-14 has a half-life of 5,730 years. That means that after 5,730 years, the amount of carbon-14 atoms in a, say, plant that you found fossilized will be half of what it was the last time that plant took, well, a breath of life.
Unless
After
you
11,
bombard it with more sunlight, right? Like you've got to take the thing and you got to bury it, and you got to have all these proper conditions where nothing else is touching it that's going to continually feed it more carbon. And yeah, but if you're continually
water,
feeding it, it's going to throw off the numbers.
like something like water, it being
Yeah,
put underwater is going to throw it way off.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of the things that you need in order to make a fossil is water. And yeah, you got to have this movement of water, right? And so that's going to mess with the numbers for sure. I was looking up the sun here, and how I was talking about how the sun has to, is one of the things that is really a major contributor. And they're acting like the sun has to be the same all the time. Like there's no solar flares ever. All of a sudden, oh, you got a solar flare. And you got a lot more rays up here. The weather changes all the time. If all of a sudden it's been really cloudy for a little while longer or something like that, you're going to be reflecting a lot more radiation, right? And so
ice ages they've claimed, and this and that. Yeah. It's forever changing.
Well, they know there's a solar cycle now. There's,
Yeah.
But yeah, they're kind of given this huge impression that the sun is always producing the exact same amount of radiation, and the atmosphere itself never changes. And that's why it's so predictable, is because it's consistent. But if all of a sudden you take all that consistency, start shaking it up and going crazy with it, it loses its predictability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and assuming that the atmosphere has always been the same, which we're going to find out it hasn't been, according to like their own scientists. But we'll get into that. And I don't know if it'll be this video or the next video. We'll see.
2 half-lives, there'll be a quarter the amount of carbon-14 that was originally present. And then after 17,190 years, you'll have just an eighth of the number of carbon-14, and so on until there's none left. And this is actually one of the limitations of carbon-14 dating, that eventually you're going to go far enough back in time that all of the carbon-14 atoms have decayed. And you don't know whether this took place a day before or 100,000 years before, which means the time limit that you can date things using carbon-14 is roughly 50,000 years. But as long as you are trying to date something that lived on Earth within the last 50,000 years, you can figure out roughly when it was last alive. And the way that you do that is by measuring the rate of decay of carbon-14 atoms compared to the slow and steady carbon-12 atoms that are also present in there. Presto, changeo, you've got some carbon-14 dating, and all of a sudden you say, oh my God, this wooden axe handle is 12,000 years old. Pretty sweet stuff. And this whole thing gets even more interesting when you realize that future archaeologists are going to have a lot of trouble using carbon-14 dating thanks to us humans of the present time. Our industrial activities have been pumping CO2 into the atmosphere and really messing with
Oh
the ratio
boy.
of carbon-12 to carbon-14. And
Gotta throw
even
that
more
in there.
astounding, all of the nuclear bombs that we set off in the mid-20th century,
Oh, just
the
throw it
atmospheric
all in there.
ratios too. So good luck with all of that, future anthropologists and archaeologists. Sorry.
Oh yes, and go back to the numbers again on how much emissions a volcano, any like decent volcano emission will put out compared to any of these activities. But I digress.
And yet they
Yeah,
claim
right.
they are complaining about cows and how many emissions cows put off, right? And yeah, they
That's
believe in
hilarious.
dinosaurs. I wonder how much poop the dinosaurs that they claim believed in, how much poop they did and how much they affected the atmosphere.
Maybe that's what did it. Maybe that's what ended them, all their poop. Those big giant dinosaurs. Oh man. Yeah, scientists, I don't know if they've always been like this or not, really. I mean, this stuff's definitely been going on a lot longer than I've been alive. But have they always been this outlandish? Or is this, you think, within the last 150 years or so? I bet there's always been people
I think
making
it's
up
probably within the last 100 years, mostly.
where it really got out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree, Karen. I believe that there's always been some fringe people and some fringe ideas that have made it, but overall we used again much more of the trivium. We used a much more common sense. We're here.
Mm-hmm.
We do so much theoretical, and again, you get the problem with redshift with everything. Once somebody makes something that they call even a theory, and enough people will pick up and build their theories on it, all of a sudden it's an assumed law, and they never established it as law before. Before, in other words, they build it, and then when enough people build things, it is law. Hubble's law is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. But
Okay, now we're going to get into a video that is anti. Now, even that's what I thought was so funny. That last guy was pro carbon dating, but then at the end, he's like, and here's a couple monkey wrenches
Yeah.
to, tell you all good luck. It's going to be real hard to do because we've messed everything up to actually do this properly.
It's
think
almost
that's
like he's
really-
pushing the carbon dating, but then he's also making an excuse for
Yeah.
people who try to debunk it or
Mhm.
who
But
do
they're
debunk
agreeing with
it.
them. They're agreeing with them that there's problems with it, and that's a really significant thing. Is that they acknowledge that there's holes in it, that there's problems with it, and so they're doing our work for us, which is
Mhm.
great.
but it's built on mass spectroscopy, which is very complicated and very intense, and so therefore they can do the math, and it's like 1 in a trillion particles. When you start getting into the different things they're looking at for it, and that, and again, we can measure that tiny. So it's just because we can measure that tiny, and they seem to say, well, because we have the technology to measure this fine, therefore that makes everything that we're saying correct and every theory correct that we apply it to. Just because we'll get our technology enough to measure how many particles are within a batch, or how many atoms in there. So again, it's a proving that you can measure this, and proving, and then again applying it to the whole the people that again prove it, that mostly will go on the debunk or the side saying conspiracy theory will say that it's well, because we can come up with math, and this math happens. But again, they throw out every sample that's outside of it, and they say how many reasons they have to, because of so many variables. It's just again amazing that they built a full science on it. So go ahead.
Oh, let me turn that up. This is Educate for Life videos.
And this is the same problems with radioactive dating and carbon-14 dating. How is a rock like an hourglass? On the left, we have what are called parent isotopes, and on the right, we have what are called daughter isotopes. Carbon-14 is a parent isotope. It's radioactive and it's unstable, and it changes into nitrogen-14 over time. It has what's called a half-life. Now, scientists will try to date different rocks and fossils using these different radioactive isotopes. Let me explain how it works. With carbon-14, an animal takes in carbon-14 by eating grass. The grass has carbon-14 in it, and the grass then goes into the animal, and it has carbon-14 in it. Over time, animals keep taking in carbon-14, but when they die, they stop taking in carbon-14. All the while, the carbon-14 is changing into nitrogen-14. But once they die, they're no longer adding any carbon-14 into their system. So theoretically, you could say that a dead animal that has a whole lot of nitrogen-14 in it has been dead a lot longer than a dead animal with just a little bit of nitrogen-14 in it. And this is how they use radioactive dating. They say, if I have a rock that has a whole bunch of a daughter isotope in it, and I have another rock that has a lot less of a daughter isotope in it, then the rock with more daughter isotope is older than the rock with less daughter isotope. But what's our problem? Remember the 3 assumptions we talked about with the hourglass? Assumption 1, the amounts of parent and daughter isotopes at the beginning when the rock formed must be known. That means you have to know your initial conditions. How much sand was in the top of the hourglass when the hourglass started running? The problem is you don't know what the initial conditions were. A rock may have a whole bunch of the parent isotope, or it may have a little, or it may have a whole bunch of the daughter isotope, or it may have a little. You don't know. Assumption 2, all the daughter atoms measured today must only have been derived by radioactive decay in that rock. There can be no contamination that took place, but in reality, daughter isotopes will leach in and out of a rock. So water will bring daughter isotopes in, making the rock look older than it actually is. Assumption 3, the radioactive decay rate must have been constant at today's measured rate, a constant decay rate. The problem is we've only been dating rocks and fossils for about 100 years using radioisotope dating. So how do we know that the rate has been consistent over billions of years? We don't know. These are 3 assumptions that literally cannot be known. None of these assumptions are provable. The past cannot be observed and measured, so these assumptions are not even reasonable. Daughter atoms may be inherited when rock forms, and subsequent contamination is common. This makes it impossible to determine the age of the Earth based on radioisotope dating. There was an 8-year creationist research project to investigate radioisotopes and the age of the Earth, and it concluded that assumption 3, that is a constant decay rate, is absolutely false. They found that you can change the rate of decay based on the environment in which the isotopes are located.
Did you see that? What it said about the flood there at the
isotopes.
bottom? Concluded that during
the flood there was rapid rates of decay.
Mhm.
During the flood.
Only that one, not others. I see that after, like, we let him talk, I didn't need to say anything. That guy just said it more coherently, better, and presented it. But I'm glad I'm not crazy with what I was thinking of looking at it. Yeah, only the flood did it. But yeah,
And it
And
makes
really-
sense because water is a solvent.
of
Mhm.
course.
The best solvent out
Yeah,
there.
it's nature's solvent.
And some places get more rain than other places.
So
and
of course, when there's water, there's rapid rates of decay.
So
Yes.
you all,
Yeah,
this
so
is
how would you even start to do this in nature? You would have to sit there and, watch an animal die in nature and then, like, I don't know, quarantine it off so nobody comes and takes it away or something like that, and just watch it right there. You can't put
Right.
it in a
And then
lab.
take intermittent samples
mhm.
of it. That's what I was saying. We watched everything decay over 5,000 years and took samples. And you
Mhm.
don't know. They're just, this is, assumptions.
Oh, you guys just pulling in some current events right now. If you're following any current events with Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Awakawa dying, did anybody read that story? Anybody familiar?
I've heard a little bit. People were asking about it on Coffee Talk, but I had not looked into it. So
Okay,
Those
I'm
names
just gonna
it does sound
completely
bizarre.
unfamiliar to me.
I'm gonna throw one bizarre thing just to keep in mind that nobody has mentioned anywhere. But I'm waiting for people to, like, again, question what you've been told. You all know petrification and how it takes hundreds and thousands of years, or how long it takes to petrify things. One of the things that you're going to come up with this is their bodies were not found for like 10 days to 2 weeks after they died, but they were found petrified, partially petrified already. And so there
Mummification
was,
was setting in, they
yeah,
said.
almost. They said, yeah, petrification setting in really, really good. And they were, so one article did do it where somebody did question, I should say, not nobody, one geeky article did go into it, and they were explaining how the dry areas and the arid things could cause this like anomaly and rapid petrification and that. But again, we've been talking about for years, Karen, petrification, turning into stone, different changes, and that don't tend to happen over thousands of years or
Mm-hmm.
growing the way we were told.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention. But that was just throwing a current event in. I'm sorry that took us off topic.
Where
Yeah.
were they at? Where it was dry? Where were they
New
living?
Mexico,
Oh,
Santa Fe,
They
okay.
I
were in
think.
Santa Fe.
Okay.
Just think about the
See, I
differences
haven't
between
read
They
anything
Mexico
said it
and
was cold and
Brazil.
arid, and
But now
yeah.
I'm intrigued with the petrification thing because I didn't even hear that. I just heard
Okay.
something. Everybody keeps talking about their dog. I was like, well, it is weird. Like, stuff sounds weird, but now I'm intrigued with that whole petrification aspect of it.
Wait, so someone's dog was able to petrify in a short amount of time?
No,
No,
the
he and his
bodies were
No.
wife,
found.
their
He and
bodies
his
were
wife found they were
just after like 10 days.
Oh
10
wow.
days to 2 weeks. Their bodies were partially, they said, petrified.
Starting to
So
petrify, yeah.
starting to petrify, yeah. Uh-huh.
It's wild.
So just again, when they talk to us about how all these things work in timelines, I'm just saying, open your eyes and pay attention, or walk by a river, touch roots in that pine where things are turning to stone. But go ahead.
All right, and this was my favorite video, so I saved it for last. Ken Hovind, I know he's totally against, the idea that the Earth can't be anything than what is sitting on his desk right there. But he is really good at arguing and debating evolution and this carbon dating stuff. He's done quite a lot of research. I don't know how much he's actually played with it himself. But he's very good at getting a point across. He's a good speaker.
We are hearing out all these different people from different backgrounds, and I think that's really a part of not being a sucker for the genetic fallacy. The genetic fallacy is the one that says, well, so and so said so, and therefore it must not be true. Truth doesn't care who's saying the story. Okay,
Exactly.
Truth doesn't care who's telling the truth. Okay, and the example I always like to use is a parrot. Okay, a parrot can say all manner of things. A parrot can say dogs are mammals and has no idea what it's saying. Okay, but just because it's a parrot doesn't mean it's unable to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It can still, dogs are still mammals, whether it's a parrot that's saying it or whether it's, some kind of a collegiate academic professor or something like that. It really doesn't matter. And yeah, that's important. So we can't say that, oh, well, Neil Tyson said so, therefore it must not be true. No. And so we listen to people like that all the time. And that's what's unique about us compared to everyone else. Well, where's your peer-reviewed paper? Right? That's what they're always saying. Where's your peer-reviewed paper? They're being just a sucker for the genetic fallacy. Well, what professors have said that? Where's all this stuff in academia that says that? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Okay. The genetic fallacy, is saying that all of that stuff is irrelevant. Who says it doesn't matter. What's more important is kind of the groundwork that's leading up to that claim.
Doesn't that look like a femur?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big femur.
It is. What's up with that? Does he still have that? What is that supposed to be? And why is there what's that stupid ball on his desk?
I know. I know. Oh, Kent. Yeah, okay. This is a good one though. I enjoy this. He's great at giving analogies to get his point across. I do like the way he handles himself too. You know, there's some people that do debates that are just nasty, but he's good at, for the most part, yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen him like really lose his temper on anyone.
Yeah, no, I've never seen him like flip out. I've seen him get a little heated, but I've never seen him like lose it, which is hard to do when you're debating and you're passionate about the subjects.
I think
All
that's
right.
a really important concept is when you're trying to find common ground with someone else, you have to understand where they're coming from and be able to explain all that. And so, yeah, I think that's why I end up quoting Neil Tyson all the time, is because he's kind of the leader of the globalists, right? And so we're kind of trying to find common ground with him to build bridges with other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. Take it away, Ken.
Produced in the atmosphere by the sun, it breaks down at the rate of about half of it will break down every 5,730 years. This is called the half-life. So if I gave you a pile of carbon-14 and you waited 5,730 years, half of it would turn back to nitrogen and you'd end up with half a pile. If you wait another 5,700 years, half of that is going to turn to nitrogen. You end up with a fourth of a pile. In theory, it never goes to zero. It goes from half to fourth to eighth to 16th, etc. But plants are always breathing in carbon-14 in the photosynthesis process. They're breathing in carbon. Some of it's carbon-14. Most of it's normal carbon-12. Animals eat the plants and make it part of their body. Probably during your lifetime, you've either eaten plants or you've eaten animals that have eaten plants. That's about all there is to eat out there. And so you're absorbing radioactive carbon into you, just like I am into me, because we're getting it through the food chain. The plants got it from the air got it from the sun. This carbon-14 got into the plants, then it got into you or into the animals and then into you. But either way, we all contain some radioactive carbon. When the plant or animal dies, it's not going to get any more, obviously. So several assumptions are involved in carbon dating. First of all, they assume that the amount of C14 in the atmosphere, the ratio, which is a very small number, is the same found in the plants and animals. For instance, the atmosphere contains 0.0000765% radioactive carbon-14. It is assumed that I have the same. I've never been tested for C14, and I've never met anybody who has. But I would say that's a reasonable assumption, but it is an assumption. Okay. When the plant or animal dies, it doesn't get any more C14, so whatever it had begins to decay. It was decaying while it was alive, but you never noticed it because it's being replenished, so the balance would stay. But as soon as it dies, it begins to go out of balance. So basically, carbon dating is measuring the amount of carbon in the object with the amount of carbon in the atmosphere and getting a balance. If the atmosphere is 0.0000765% and the object you're dating is only half as much, they would assume it's been dead for one half-life. If it's only 1/4 as much, it's been dead for two half-lives. 2 times 5,730. And then it goes to a fourth, to an eighth, to a 16th. So they're comparing the amount in the object with the amount in the atmosphere. This is how carbon dating works. Sounds good, certainly sounds scientific, but it's based on some serious assumptions that mess up everything. It doesn't work. If I told you to fill a barrel with water, but I have drilled holes in the barrel, while you're putting water in, it begins to leak out. So you have a process of filling and a process of leaking at the same time. You have an adding and subtracting going on simultaneously. At some point, you're going to reach a stage called equilibrium. You'll never fill the barrel past that point unless you speed up the input or decrease the outgo, one or the other. Well, Earth's atmosphere is constantly taking in carbon-14 from the sun and is constantly losing it to decay. So you have the same thing as the barrel. The question would be, how long would it take the Earth's atmosphere to reach equilibrium? Well, when carbon dating was first discovered or invented in the early 1950s or late 1940s, actually, Willard Libby did this, University of Chicago. He said, I wonder how long it would take the Earth's atmosphere to reach equilibrium, because he knew about the equilibrium problem. They said, after doing some studies, it would take about 30,000 years. Basically, if you made a brand new planet Earth, poof, create one, cover it with air, start it spinning around itself and spinning around the sun is going to strike the oxygen, strike the atmosphere and produce carbon-14, and it's going to start decaying. And they said within 30,000 years, the atmosphere would be equalized. You'd reach this point called equilibrium. You're never going to get more C14, and you shouldn't get any less unless something changes in the system. Well, sounds good. I don't know if the number's right, but the concept is, within 30,000 years, the Earth's atmosphere would reach equilibrium. The problem is, we still haven't reached equilibrium. There's more C14 now than there was 20 years ago. Actually, radiocarbon is forming 28 to 37% faster than its decay. So if we still haven't reached equilibrium, then the Earth is less than 30,000 years old, which is what the Christians have been saying all along. A friend of mine has a website, archy.org. You can get information there about Earth's atmosphere has still not reached equilibrium. There's been a lot of people doing research on this, and we're not there yet. This chart indicates how carbon-14 is supposed to work in theory. An object that is still alive should be in balance with the atmosphere, which would give you 16, I'm going to simplify this a little bit, give you 16 clicks per minute per gram on your Geiger counter. If you're listening to testing a sample, it'll go click every 4 seconds, click, click. If it's only giving you 8 clicks per minute, then you're assuming it's 5,700 years old. It's been through 1 half-life. If you're only getting 4 clicks per minute, it's been through 2 half-lives. If you're getting 2 clicks per minute, it's been through 3 half-lives. It's 11,000 years old. This is how carbon dating is done. If you test a sample and you find out you're getting 2.5 clicks per minute or 2.9 or something like that, you look at the chart and read over and find the age by the simple calibration curve, they call it. Sounds good. Doesn't work. If you walked into a room and found a candle burning on a table, and I asked you the very simple question, when was it lit? You say, I don't know. It was burning when I got here. Okay. Let's do what's called empirical science, things we can test and demonstrate and weigh and prove, okay? We're going to measure the candle. We measure the height of the candle. We find out the candle is 7 inches tall. Okay. When was it lit? You say, I don't know. Okay, let's do some more science. Let's measure how fast it burns. Suppose we get an Olympic stopwatch and we measure this thing very carefully and find out the candle is burning 1 inch every hour. Now we've got 2 hard science empirical facts. The candle is 7 inches tall. It is burning 1 inch an hour. When was it lit? You still can't tell me unless you make some assumptions. How tall was it? And has it always burned at the same rate? Neither of those assumptions can be proven. They are purely assumptions, okay? If you find a fossil in the dirt, all you know is it died. You don't even know where it died. You just know where it ended up buried, that's all. Now, the amount of carbon-14 could be measured very precisely, and the rate of decay could be determined. But when did it live? I have no idea, and nobody does. Because you'd have to know how much was in it when it was alive, which that would depend on the assumption that the Earth's atmosphere has reached equilibrium, and we haven't. And you'd have to know that it's always decayed at the same rate. Now, if the Bible is right, and the Earth had a canopy of water overhead, like the Bible, I think, clearly teaches in 2 Peter 3 and in Genesis 1, 6, and 7, this canopy of water would filter out quite a bit of radiation, and they probably had a lot less carbon-14 in the original creation than we do today. So if you dig up a fossil from an animal that drowned in the flood, and I don't know if any of these are or not, but if you find a fossil and say, wow, I believe this one, this ammonite, may have drowned in the flood. Probably did. And we want to find out it's got carbon. It probably doesn't. It's been totally replaced by minerals, but let's assume it has organic material. And so we carbon date it. They would assume that it lived in an atmosphere that's just like we have today. Faulty assumption. Not a good idea. There's some examples of how carbon dating doesn't work. We'll go in chronological order here. Back in 1949, an article came out in Natural History magazine that said the lower leg of a mammoth dated 15,000 years old, but the skin dated 21,000 years old. It didn't work in 1949. 1963, a living mollusk shell carbon dated at 2,300 years old. Well, here we are 14 years later, carbon dating is still not working. Okay. 1970, this article came out and they said, if a carbon date supports our theories, we put it in the main text. If it is not entirely contradicting, we put it in a footnote. If it's completely out of date, we just drop it. 1971, a freshly killed seal carbon dated at 1,300 years old. Still not working, folks.
This is great, Zach. This is great.
A freshly killed seal was carbon dating at 1,300 years. It's been dead.
I've
This was
heard
in
similar.
1971.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still just lost in the whole thinking about how it's assuming the atmosphere is the same everywhere. Right? We've got the whole rainforest over there, and the atmosphere above the rainforest, despite all those trees, is going to have the exact same atmosphere as a place with tons of volcanoes going off all at once. You know,
Yeah.
huge assumptions going on here, and it's not going to be just 1,000-year difference like this. It's going to be a lot bigger of a difference when they've got tons of volcanoes compared to tropical rainforests. Like, yeah, the world is much more diverse than that. They shouldn't be painted all as one picture.
And these are great. Yeah, I love it when they do different parts of the same animal, and it
Mhm.
But
comes out.
Kyle, they will tell you if you watch. I forgot the annoying. It was somebody even more annoying than BSOT's doing a debunk one on I was watching. If you were to watch that, I mean, everything you say is not. It's not valid, Kyle. It's not. You're not looking at it complicated enough. It's not right.
Oh yeah, you're always gonna find those people.
Yeah.
When was this? 1973. Yeah, I love this part of this video here. He just goes through and lays out a bunch of them.
A baby mammoth was found frozen. Part of it dated 40,000 years old, another part was 26,000 years old, and the wood next to it is 9,000 years old. Still not working in 1975. 1981, they tried it again. This guy said, no matter how useful it is, the radiocarbon method is still not capable of yielding accurate and reliable results. There are gross discrepancies, the chronology is uneven and relative, and the accepted dates are actually selected dates. This whole blessed thing is nothing but 13th century alchemy. It all depends upon which funny paper you read. Still not working. 1984, shells from living snails were carbon dated at 27,000 years old. Still not working. 1985, they took 11 human skeletons, the earliest known human remains in the Western Hemisphere, and they were carbon dated or dated by accelerator mass spectrometer. All 11 dated 5,000 radiocarbon years or less.
So different materials hold on to different amounts of carbon. And that should just be an automatic, easy answer right there.
I mean, it
Everything
even
should be
depends on the
different.
conditions that those materials sat in all that time.
Mm-hmm. And those conditions could have changed 100 times over 5,000 years. That's a
It does.
long time.
Probably
It does,
did.
but what they'll do is they'll say that they've accounted for all the conditions because they have like an ice sample or a core sample from Antarctica or again different core samples, and they have tree rings. Now, were those tree rings or core samples taken anywhere near the finds? No, but they can tell you what the climate was, and they can point at the sky and take readings, so they know what the conditions are going back 50,000 years, and they're going to explain. The one really annoying dude explained perfectly how he could point something at the sky and tell you what the conditions were for the last 50,000 years and collaborate it with the tree rings that they have going back and the core samples. And so therefore they feel valid to throw out the bad samples that they know are bad and trust the rest. Oops. I'm on camera and somehow that happened with the microphone, but Cammy rant in the dark.
When it comes to all this, I always love to just ask, show your work, because they always make the big, bold statements saying this is 20,000 years old, and yet they don't really show their work and what led them to believe that. They just said, oh, carbon dating, that's it. And that's obviously got so many holes in it, it just doesn't hold water. So you got to say more than, okay, what else led you to that conclusion? And yeah, way too often it's like reading a magazine. It doesn't go deep enough to tell you the answer.
Big shout out to AI over on Rockfin. Thank you for the tip there. Much appreciated, friend. All right. I'll let Ken wrap this one up. He's got about a minute to go. There's not too much more.
Here, these things are supposed to be, a 250,000 years old or something. It's not working in 1985. 1992, two Colorado Creek mammoths, side by side, buried frozen mammoths, were dated. One was 22,000 years old, the other is 16,000 years old. Still not working in 92. In 1996, at Berkeley University, they've got the Geochronology Center. Carl Swisher used the most advanced techniques to date human fossils. This article said last spring he was reevaluating Homo erectus skulls found in Java by testing the sediment found with them. A hominid species assumed to be an ancestor of Homo sapien, erectus was thought to have vanished 250,000 years ago. Even though he used two different dating methods, Swisher kept making the same startling find. The bones were 53,000 at most and possibly no more than 27,000. Well, I would like to point out, Your Honor, that is a 96% error. So it's not working.
Where was the one that was true? That's my question. Where was the one that was, oh, this was correct? I did not hear a single one. Yep, they got this one on the mark. This is correct.
Yep, that doesn't happen.
It's kind of
well, actually, it does. They'll say that they get it on the mark unless they can pull it absurd. Unless you have the absurd things next to it, they're claiming the rest of their data is correct, Kyle. Unless you can, like, again, find the where you have the finds right next to each other, and they call these the anomalies that
What
you
do you
throw
check
out.
it against to verify it, though?
They don't. But
No,
when you
they
do,
just
if
claim
you
that they do, that they have it right. Yeah, it's just Narnia, pretty much. We'll just say whatever we want.
That's kind of like psychiatry, I think. How many people have you cured? It's kind of the question. And it's kind of like this. It's kind of, how many times have you got it right? If you've never, ever gotten her right, why would you give it any kind of credibility?
I think he's done. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, that was Ken Hovind.
He made some great points there. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, he's really good at getting a point across. He's got a knack for that. All righty. So that was carbon dating. Like I said, I've never gotten to play with any of these toys. They get up there in price, and I'm really not that interested in knowing how old they are. I love looking at the rocks and stuff, and learning about their frequencies and whatnot, and what I can use
don't know that
them
we
for.
can know. We can't know how old the rocks are.
I don't
Me
think
personally, I don't think you can know, especially because like the rate of decay, and if you study minerals and stuff, a lot of minerals have different stages. Like there's something after pyrite, like I can't remember them all right now, but there's minerals that will decay away and then something else replaces it. And, and they find them all, in similar areas, and
continually changing.
And it's just everything's always changing or moving or whatever, and it's just and the minerals especially, they don't really have a expiration date, in my opinion.
And one of the things that you'll talk about, Karen, that does contaminate their samples for the ones that don't work is, again, things breaking down and also putting out similar marks and contaminating the samples. Because, again, there are multiple different ways to get out some of the daughter molecules and that. So when they're doing the different studies, I think it's fascinating that they figured out how to do this or figured out the logic behind it, but it's again with a grain of salt with the amount of variables attached. Just a personal opinion, and the more I learn, the more I agree with it.
I'm not saying there couldn't possibly be some kind of way to date things, but I don't think it's this way.
When they can start to show me a series of correct cases, then they'll have my attention. Then I'll say, "Oh wow!"
But then, how do you show that it's correct? Like, I just don't know. You would have to have two separate, independent ways to verify the age of something to say that it's correct.
That's a really.
It's just like journalism. If you want to say that, if you want to, put something out as true, you have to have two separate independent sources at minimum, verifying the story before you can publish it. So
well said.
And in this case, if you're taking ones and basing them off of each other, going back, like in other words, basing the dating off of that because it's based on there, they're going to match each other because you're setting the benchmarks a lot of the times based on one of the other studies. And so if you set a benchmark towards the other study and then you compare them, they're going to. So certain parameters will, fall into that with our sciences.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way
Mhm.
to do this scientific. Like, even if you let something sit out there for 5,700 years and people for that long, I mean, you can't go up and touch it. You can't mess with it, right? You can only observe it, but that thing's going to be gone and it's going to be under the ground. The grass or whatever is going to grow up around it. Something's going to happen over 5,000. We don't just find the
Yeah.
What I'm
fossils
going to
staying
say
on
is in
top of the ground.
5,000 years, depending on where it was, something different is going to happen to it pretty much depending on where it's found. Is it in water? Is it, in other words, it's going to
Hmm.
mingle
They might be
with the
underwater in
environment. And I don't
5,000
think that
And
you
years.
then
have
how
a,
do you test that against something where you put the same material and started off in a different way, in a different environment,
we
a
can't
different
isolate
biome?
enough.
You
That's the
know,
funny
Hmm.
there's
thing
just
about it.
no way.
This
If we were
is,
to get if we were to get two boxes and say, okay, I'm going to put a rabbit in this box and a horse in this other box, cement them shut, and then just say, okay, they died on this date and they were buried in this time. I'm not going to touch it and then we do a time capsule for 500 years, and then we check on it again in 500 years to see how it's changed. Already, that's totally throwing it off because it's outside of the environment. It's not
Yeah,
yeah,
now
it makes
exactly.
me think
unnatural,
of
so
the
no
ideal
longer matches
gases,
everything
Zach.
else.
Yeah, it makes me
Mhm.
think of the ideal gases and the ideal gas laws, except for what's the problem with that, Zach, with ideal gases?
They're
They
not
don't,
real.
they're not real.
Yeah, they're a mathematical construct.
How do you account for entropy?
Exactly.
You cannot.
You cannot. Always taking place. Yeah.
And
And
there's a million different versions of it.
that affect it. Yeah. Environment. And the environment's always changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's good luck. Like that one guy said, good luck figuring this out. How to
Good
Mhm.
luck.
Yep.
Good luck.
And how often is this still taught in schools today? How often do we hear about it all over the place? Like, what kinds of structures are being built on this really flimsy foundation? Like, why is anyone building on this at all? That's my biggest question. And
Yeah.
it really seems like they just are trying to be a sucker for the narrative. Got to believe in the narrative, Big Bang, evolution, all this other stuff. It has to be, therefore, I'm just going to grab onto it, even though it's as flimsy as it gets.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's gonna wrap up the show, folks. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out. Carbon dating. In my opinion, I don't think they can do it this way. That's just me. Um, but yeah, I would like to have some of the toys just to learn about radioactivity. I'd like to test all kinds of stuff. They say all kinds of things are, radioactive. So
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be a neat thing to play with and learn about. I know Hutchinson, he used to play with all kinds of radioactive stuff. Said he had some machine that he could, cleanse his body of it, something like that.
It'd be fun to take something like if they had like a Geiger counter or something small and take it to a gem show and see what it does.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Oh, well, thank you all so much for hanging out. Karen, what you got coming up this week?
I
Is there
don't
going to be any
know.
more scripture studies? I know you guys finished Torah.
We finished the Torah, and we haven't really discussed what we're going to do next, so I am not entirely sure on it, to be all honest. I am not sure what's going on with that, but I will be back Monday for coffee talk, and I am working on stuff in the background as time allows because I have these puppies. Does anybody want a puppy? If you want a
I do.
puppy, you can email me or you can call me. If you're within driving distance of Charlotte and you want a puppy, I got you.
They are so cute. They really are.
I'm fostering puppies. They're not my dogs, but I'm trying to help these critters out. You know
We're
how it
thinking
is.
about it. Cammy's.
I'm weak. I keep on telling anybody
No
kids
pressure, like no pressure from me. I know that it's a big
I know,
commitment,
but I
but I
love
do need to
dogs.
find homes for these puppies. And there's a couple of
They're
really
such
cute,
good dogs. My
sweet
last
little
dog was
girls in there. Yeah.
Australian Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
Australian Shepherds.
and they're
This
just
isn't, yeah, I don't know
they're a
what these
border
dogs are, if
collie.
they're border collie shepherd, but they're that type of breed. The breed that's
Yeah,
like super intelligent, very
Right.
well behaved, and they listen very well. They're just a very good dog. A very
If you
good,
keep them in
and
a
they get a
cage,
nice, that perfect size. They're like
yeah,
Hank
they're
size
not too
usually,
big, they're not too
about 30
small.
pounds, 40 pounds maybe, enough to scare
Yeah.
somebody off, but not
Actually,
gonna
this
drag
dog,
you down the road either.
she's a good alarm dog. If something comes around, she barks, she lets you know, you're like, what's going on? They're good. They're very good dogs. Anyway, no pressure. Somebody wants a
They're
puppy, you let me know.
all right. Kyle, what you got coming up this week?
I've got a whole bunch of cards that I really want to play on the light from the sun not being parallel that are just really great. And I also really want to talk more about personal domes of vision, the really important concept. And our friend Sylvia Halpert, she has a great book that really talks a lot about that. And I was going to kind of do a big shout out for her on that.
We love Sylvia. Great,
Mhm.
great
Yeah,
person.
shout out to Sylvia.
Big shout out to Sylvia.
Absolutely.
Really good person. Well, Karen, you didn't say, well, Cammy, what are you doing this week or that, but you were
I was
going to.
about to, and you
You were
kind
going to. And I came in.
of
I was just going to tell Karen that if she went to the gym show to take her little Geiger counter and look for the green diamonds, this is a fun fact that the
Mm-hmm.
green diamonds are radioactive. And what's fun about them is they are, for any geek out there, you know that we make everything like underground and can synthesize anything like found in nature in a way. And so one of the biggest things is detecting what's real versus what's created in laboratory, what's grown by nature. The radioactive and the green diamond is one of the biggest mysteries as far as we have still been working on it unless it's come up soon. The way that they treat diamonds to turn them green in laboratory is the same way that nature does it. And we have a really hard time determining, hey, did this come out of the ground like this color, or did somebody nuke it and turn it that color? And if they ever find out a way of testing it, the natural green ones will get very valuable. But right now, because you can not detected to, you have a whole category of undetermined, or the ones that are determined people don't trust even. So that's just a fun side note on where that goes. But yeah, some of your stones they do test all of the stones. It used to be a lot of the blue topaz and that coming in was radioactive, and they do test all the stuff coming in the country now.
Pretty
and
stuff
are
has to
pretty
be deadly.
it can be. I was laughing because they were showing crystal fireplaces, Karen. And Karen, what's wrong with making a fireplace a geode and making it into a fireplace? Tell me what's wrong with that.
What's gonna damage the crystals?
They don't like heat. They
They don't
like the
like heat.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the heat comes in when they're forming, but after that, they don't
After
like
that,
it.
it will fade them, and yeah.
Yeah, after that, they don't like it.
Yeah, it's a part of the growing process. But you're right. Once they're all full grown, just like you don't want to be lit on fire, they don't either.
That's interesting. You'd think a rock wouldn't care so much, but yeah.
They do. They
Some
do. You
do,
rock them
some
marines,
don't.
and a lot of them do.
Some
A lot more. A
explode.
lot
A
more.
lot more of them do, though. Yeah.
Then like your amethyst and a lot of your stuff will fade in sunlight. You're not imagining it's not getting paler. It will actually react to it, and they like it, and they like it in
Yeah, if
dark and
rocks
cool and
have
better. Yeah.
water inside of them, they'll explode.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. There's so much
Yeah.
to that topic that I would love to know more about.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it comes
Totally.
to like the Chinese history and about how I've looked into the terracotta warriors and about how they've just kind of flooded that area with mercury and and about how jade is radioactive too. And
Yeah.
I've
Well,
heard
the
that
whole
about granite
thing.
also. Granite's also kind of like a radioactive kind of a thing, which is kind of weird. So
I
many
don't know
people
about that,
And again, why on
but the whole thing with green, like green being radioactive, just a side note, just to tie that in, just to tie the sciencey geeky stuff in with like metaphysical stuff, where there is like a scientific tie-in, is green is the color of the heart chakra. Just saying.
let's see, I didn't know that.
Green crystals, like, yeah, the chakras are all color coded. Everything is color coded in this realm. And crystals are color coded too. That's how you know what they're good for. The color shows you, you know. And so the fact that, you know, these green crystals are the more radioactive crystals, and then green is also the heart chakra, and without your heart, do you live? No. Also without your head too, but you know, the heart being the center, there's 3 chakras above and 3 chakras below, and the heart is the center. So, and then also another thing with green is all the plants like green. Green is like the majority color of all living things on earth. If you go out into nature, things are green. Green is the color of life. So, just something to
decay.
think about. I mean, you know, it's like it's just, it
Mold is
seems
alive too,
over,
right?
it seems oversimplified, but if you think about it, the creator sort of made this place so that it could be understood even by children, which is, you know, what do children
which
understand? Shapes and
which is
color
what we
coding.
are.
And that's what we have, shapes and color coding, right? So, you know, just something to think about.
I love it. All righty, folks. That's going to wrap it up. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out.
See you
Hope to
next
see you
week with
back
Shane
next
and
week.
Alan. Yeah.
Shane and Alan
Yes.
will be coming to hang out and just get to know them a little bit more. They won't
We're
have
gonna
to
call
be
it Tech Meets
presenting, you
Prime
know.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just going to kind of get to know them and all that kind of good stuff. Great guys, super smart, wicked smart.
We're lucky to have them.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll be it. Hope to see you guys on Sunday for GLOBEBUSTERS, and have a great rest of your week. Remember, be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind because there's truth inside. Peace out.
Peace.